Hi everybody, this is Greg Herder and I want to welcome you to another one of my monthly coaching calls. Today we have a very special guest with us. It's Realtor Phil Herman. Now Phil is an extraordinary realtor from Dayton, Ohio, and so far in his real estate career he has closed over 6,000 transactions. Now if you think about that, that's truly an absolutely amazing accomplishment. He's closing hundreds of transactions each and every year. And over the last 20 years, he has built an unbelievable brand and identity in Dayton. So he has a steady flow of business coming towards him on a regular basis. And Phil has agreed to share some of his insights, secrets. So do me a favor, grab some paper, get ready to take some notes. Now, you're seeing me on video. Phil is on the phone, so you aren't going to actually get to see Phil, but he's got some great insights to share. So welcome, Phil. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. So, I don't know exactly where to start with you. You've got so much information in there. So why don't you just tell us, what do you think the three keys to success in real estate really are? What do you think agents should do to sort of get their careers to the next level?
Good question and a very tough question. And these are the thoughts that come to mind for me. First, I think no matter what level you are, you've got to have a coach. And there's really two coaches that you've got to hire. You've got to hire an accountability coach, and then you've got to hire a coach to help you in that area of marketing and advertising and managing your brand identity and your image. You can't go for sale by owner on your image. And I see too many agents out in the marketplace doing that, where they might know a little bit about it. They know enough that can really damage them long term. Building a team is another thought that comes to mind. And an area that I see agents struggle with often is that they're busy determining what amount of money they're going to pay for what position. And I think that's backwards. I think you've got to find the right people. You've got to find the right person. Then you figure out how you're going to pay them. And you pay them more than what they think they're worth. And then you bring out the potential in them. And, so when you say, geez, I have this position available, I've done my survey into the marketplace, and this is about how much money that position pays, that's very limiting. That you figure out, you find the right person, and when you find the right person, then you bring them on. Because it's about building relationships within your organization and within your team. And then the other thought that comes to mind is, as you grow and you build the team, everyone on the team needs to be a profit center to the team leader. Everyone spends maybe 20% or an hour or two of their day developing business. So they're actually paying for themselves. And when you build an organization and a team like that, and you're acknowledging that they bring great value to the organization, then you've got something to work with.
All right, so if I can sort of summarize what you said, first of all, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're getting coaching and sort of support and help from people that can really make a difference for you on a regular basis, whether that's on your prospecting, your marketing, whatever it is you're doing. You need to make sure you're getting support. And I see so many agents that unfortunately get coaching from all the wrong places. One failing agent gives another failing agent advice. And the reality is there's so many wonderful people out there that are willing to help you that you've got to make sure you get that. And then you've got to build a team. And I think this is one of the most important things that people pay for value, not ask themselves, what can I afford? And I think I see so many agents in this sort of trap. They say, well, gosh, I can only afford a cheap assistant, so I'm going to hire a cheap person. And unfortunately, they get what they pay for. And I think the way you think about this is so incredibly valuable to say, gosh, I want to get the very best person, and I want to pay them a little bit more than what they're really worth so I can get them to expand and grow. And I think that's what's helped you build people and staff so well over the years. And then you've got to make sure that every one of those people on your team is now being productive for the team, focused on things that are going to add value and dollar productivity to your organization. And I think a lot of people get caught up in what I call team building, and that this huge team now it can't sustain itself because it's not all focused on actually building business. So one of the things that I'm curious about is you're doing hundreds of transactions a year, and yet you've got a fairly lean sort of team. You don't have, tons and tons of people. Why don't you give us a little overview of who's on your team and how your team operates?
Another good question. Now, there's like your internal team and your external team. In other words, Greg Herder, Dennis LeBlanc, they're on my team. They're just part of the extended team. They're managing my brand image and making sure the identity is correct into the marketplace and that it's consistent. So that's a part of the team. A part of the team is someone that holds me daily accountable, that asks me questions like, Phil, how many listing appointments do you have today? Or this week? How many did you go out on? How many did you get? How many current listings do you have? So I'm always looking at what it is that I'm doing, because it's very difficult to stay dollar productive by yourself. It's hard to coach yourself. Ask that question again.
So, and I do agree with you. It is hard to coach ourselves, and I think sometimes, especially once we get some experience and we think of ourselves as an expert, we tend to think, well, gosh, I should be able to figure this out myself. And I found that having an external coach that just gives you a little bit of objectivity, a little bit of, gosh, reminding you of something that you probably knew but may have forgotten is so valuable. What I was originally asking is, how many people do you have on your team, and what's the structure of your internal team?
At any given point in time, the ideal structure of my team is you've got me, I'm the team leader, and then you've got to have a really strong right-hand person that can do, and I have a guy, his name's Brian Smith, and he's very good. He can list, sell, negotiate, prospect. There isn't anything that he can't do. So I have to have somebody at my right hand that gets me, understands it. He's been in the business a long time. We've worked together a long time. And in many areas, I learned from him. He's more of the zen of real estate, where I'm more that A personality and driven. And it's not that he's not, it's just driven differently. I've got a very good bookkeeper that's been with me for 18 years. Brian's been with me for 15 years. And then you have your selling team, maybe 3 or 4 buyer agents. And then you have your business developer. These are your telemarketers. And they're setting up appointments for you consistently daily. And it's fun to get competitions revolving around that. And then you've got your listing manager handling the listings that you're bringing in and servicing the sellers, and your contract managers handling the accepted contracts that you're bringing in. And you've got your people doing the CMAs and the courier, putting up the for sale signs, the lockbox, measuring the rooms, taking the interior, exterior color photos. You've got your people that are, and then you've got your front end desk people that are handling the calls that are coming into the environment. So that would be more of the structure of the team.
Okay, and
it's a team of about 10 or 12 that are all trying to work together. And again, it's about trying to find a chemistry of people that can work on a team and can work together. Being on a team is not for everybody. I mean, one of the things that I did for myself, Greg, once upon a time ago, I spent $15,000 taking the sign down on my building that said Phil Herman, RE/MAX Real Estate Specialist. I spent $15,000 to add one word, and associates. And I did it for me. It was to remind me that my real estate was no longer just about me. It was about a team, and I was a player on the team. And, that's how I see myself. I'm a player coach, and I don't ask them to do anything that I haven't done before. And they see me doing it, and I'm leading by example, and it makes a difference.
So give us an overview of how you're getting the Phil Herman brand out into the marketplace, and how now this flow of business comes in, and sort of how you handle it.
Well, how I get the brand out, that's something that's been developed over nearly 25 years between me and you and your organization, Greg. I mean, we've done everything from billboards on I-75 to TV to radio to large 50,000-piece direct mail pieces. We've tapped into a lot. And we've done it consistently, and it's positioned me as the leading real estate in the area. There's a certain identity. I mean, when I'm out eating dinner, I can feel people looking at me going, oh, that's that realtor. And sometimes I get up and I walk over and I go, you're looking at me because you're wondering who I am. I'm that realtor. And then I play with it. But I pull business doing that too. It takes time. It doesn't happen in a day or a week. You got to stick to it. You got to have that perseverance to stay with it and let it work for you. And again, I can't accentuate enough. Don't go for sale by owner in that area. I mean, even though I've worked with Greg for 20, 25 years, I'm constantly reading marketing books, and it probably drives Dennis, his creative director, crazy because I see things and I come up with it, and Dennis is so kind. He'll say, yeah, that's a good idea, Phil, but here's my thoughts.
So now you have this marketing and you've built this brand, and you're getting a steady flow of calls coming to do business with you. When somebody calls and they get your front desk, just walk us through what happens. How does that whole process work?
Well, this is the area that we get into, Greg, where we invite people to come into the office. I call them CEDOs. It's an acronym for coming into the office. So, they'll take down the data from the seller that's calling in to consider hiring me to go to work for them, and they'll invite them to come into the office. And I'll give you an example. You want me to role play a languaging example what that sounds like?
That'd be great.
Okay, they set the appointment, and then I might call you back, Greg, and I say, Greg, hi, this is Phil Herman. Thanks a lot for giving us a call and give me an opportunity to potentially work with you here. Greg, we haven't met. What I can tell you is, let me just give you my 15-second elevator commercial. Is that okay, Greg?
That'd be great.
All right. I own the company. I've been doing this full-time for 30 years. I've sold about 6,000 properties. Nobody in the region's ever sold 2,000 that we know of. The average realtor only sells about 4 or 5 properties a year. I've outsold a field of 3,000 agents 27 years straight. The only reason I tell you that, Greg, so you know I'm not new, I'm not part-time, and I can probably help you. At least I'm most probably in the best position to get you and your family the most amount of money in a reasonable amount of time with the fewest problems possible. And I'm sure that's what you'd want. And there probably wouldn't be anything that would come up on your home that I haven't had to deal with 100 or maybe 1,000 times before somewhere in my past. So I was wondering, Greg, would there be a convenient time that you could come into the office? That would give us a chance to get acquainted, for me to go over your needs, see if I think I can help you with your needs, but also for you to see if you feel like I'm the kind of realtor you'd like to hire to go to work for you. So when would be a convenient time for you to come into the office for us to meet?
How about Tuesday afternoon?
That works.
All right. And
You get people to come into the office. What made you start inviting them to the office versus going out to their house?
That's a great question. Once upon a time ago, my listing presentations, Greg, were for 2 hours. I would go out and I would do what everybody else was doing. I had this big brag book, and I would tell them all about me and all the awards I won and how wonderful and how great I was. And then I told them that I would do all these things for them. I would put it in the Dayton Daily News. I'd put it in the Herman Holmes magazine, the Color Real Estate book. I put brochure boxes up. I'd do brochures on their house. I'd do this and I would do that. I never could fulfill all those promises. I took a step back and I said, none of it is honest. None of it is truth and reality. Ultimately, what's between a buyer and a seller in the final analysis is going to be price. It's going to overcome all other objections. And that day, I was on 5 listing appointments, and the front desk person said, Phil, you've got a call-in listing online too, and my circuit breaker flipped. And I said, tell them to either set an appointment to come into the office or to call some other real estate brokerage. And a little while later, she comes back to me. She said, well, they're coming in tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Now, she didn't tell them to go call some other real estate broker, but she invited them to come into the office. And I was taken back by it. I was like, really? I go, what did you say? She said, I just said what you told me to. You told me to invite them to come into the office to meet with you for a consultation. I offered that up to them, and they agreed to come in. And that's when it began. And so there was a shift. At one time, I could only do 4 listings in 8 hours because it took me 2 hours per listing, a half hour to get there, half hour to get back, or 20 minutes to get there, 20 minutes to get back. They would talk about the apple tree they planted in the backyard that was not contributing value to the property, and it was exhausting. And so now I can do what I call a CETO appointment, again, an acronym for come into the office, inviting people into the office. Within 15 minutes, the people will hire me. So they're coming to me. Now, what comes with that are many things. Number one, my competition is not doing it. And oftentimes they'll come up with that as an objection. They'll say, well, I'm talking to a couple other realtors, and they didn't invite me out. Now, you got to know what to say. If you don't know what to say, you don't deserve the business. I know what to say. So I might say to that, well, I wonder why they didn't invite you to come in. Maybe they didn't have anything to show you. But I do. The only way I can show you how I've done 6,000 transactions over the past 30 years is to show you. So, you know what? If you come in for 15 minutes, it'll save you maybe 2 hours into the future. Most of the closings are going to take place in my office anyway. But it'll give you an opportunity to meet some of my staff, see what kind of marketing I have behind me, so you can see what is allowing me to sell on a consistent basis a large volume, a large number of homes, and bring buyers and sellers together and help them accomplish their piece of the American dream. And so I'll just have conversation. Now, let's say you're always going to get that really tough guy, right, Greg, that doesn't want to drive in, right? That's
Yes.
always there.
And I'm sure that's a fear in agents' minds from even asking, gosh, would you come in?
Absolutely. And you know, it's a process. It takes time to learn how to build the confidence to be able to do that. But let's just say that this particular seller, and we all get them, they just don't want to come in. Well, then I would shift. And you got to be about 5 deep in any objection. If you're 1 deep and you take that one shot and you miss, you're done. So I always say you got to be 5 deep in any objection, whether it's a commission objection. You know, what's your commission? You better know how to handle that 5 different ways. What's your term of listing? You better know how to handle that 5 different ways. You know, how are you going to price the property? You better know how to handle that 5 different ways. So you're increasing the odds that you're going to be able to speak to their listening, because that's what you're trying to figure out. How do I speak with them in such a way that it influences them to want to hire me to go to work for them? But let's go back to the seller I got on the phone, you, Greg, that's resisting coming in. Then I might say, Greg, I forgot to mention, I have a gift for you.
Wow. What kind of a gift?
I pause and I wait for you to go, wow, because you want to know what it is, don't you?
I do.
I got you leaning, don't I? Yeah, that's what I call it. You want to catch them leaning. So I say, yeah, Greg, I got a gift for you. I forgot to mention, I have a $100 Visa gift card, and there's no obligation for you to hire me to go to work for you. It's just a small token of my appreciation for your willingness to come in and visit with me. I'm honoring your time, that your time is valuable and important. So, you know, worst case scenario, Greg, you can fill your car up with gas and go to a dinner and a movie on me. You have nothing to lose. So one would be a convenient time for you to come into the office. Now, let's just say you're really tough and the $100 didn't do it. And you hesitate at the $100 and you say, well, you know, I don't think so. Then I'll say to you, Greg, make it $250.
Wow. So how many people do you have not take you up on this offer?
Well, that's the interesting thing, or question. everybody has a price. That's, I did it on my accountant first, and she wouldn't come in for $50. I said, well, make it 100, and she came in, and I looked at her and I said, I'd have paid you $250. So, everybody has a price. So you got to figure out what that is. Now, the question is how can you afford to do that, right? Aren't I just spending marketing dollars up front? How can I afford to do that? Well, Greg, what price range is your house?
$1.2 million.
$1.2 million? Well, just make it a $500,000.
Okay.
$1.2 million in Dayton, Ohio. I like $1.2 million. I'll take $1.2 million. But just call it $500,000. Well, let's just say I get 7% on the commission, 4% on the list side. That's $20,000. And I offered you $250 to come in with me. So I'm still netting $19,750 when I sell the house, right?
Yes.
That works for me. Now, here's the interesting thing. Once your skill set is in place, then your percentage of conversion goes way up. So on a gift card offering, maybe 7 or 8 out of 10 are going to hire me. There may be a few people that are coming in for the $100 or the $200 gift card, and they're going to use me for that. Well, I have that budgeted in my own mind. That's the nature of human beings. Some people are going to do that, and it's okay. And by the way, when they come in the door, I give them the gift card before we even begin a conversation about real estate, so they see how clean this is. Incidentally, I ran it by the Ohio Division of Real Estate to make sure that what I was doing was acceptable. And their conversation, as long as you give everybody a card that wants to come in, you're okay, but you don't give them one card, we're on you.
And to me, the brilliant thing about it is that I look at it not as a marketing expense, but I think look at the time savings and look at the efficiency of how you're operating, because by the time you take the time to drive there, the fact that you're going to spend longer at their house than if they come in, you drive back, you've got gas, you've got expenses. To me, it's to me, it's a no-brainer when I think about it, because it seems like it's such a more efficient system, and it's such an easy way to overcome any mental objections in people's brains. It's, I've got a gift for you, here's the $100, and it focuses them on you're helping them out. It also puts in that law of reciprocity in that they put into place the second you walk in, they walk in and you give them the business card. There's so many positive things about it, and I really want our listeners to focus on those versus thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to cost me $100, in that the reality is you're saving more than what it's really costing you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that little script that I gave you, that 15-second elevator commercial, it takes about 1 minute. It's a 1-minute listing presentation. They're saying yes at the end of that conversation, because the way I tie it in, I say, well, Greg, based on that information, do you feel I'm qualified to help you with the sale of your property?
All right.
It's hard to say no to that.
It would be very hard to say no to that.
It's hard to say no to that. So inviting people to come in to the office is distinguishing me from all the other realtors that don't ever invite people to come in for a consultation on the first appointment. Now, when they come in, they're on their best behavior. When I go out to their homes, I have to be on my best behavior. You know what I mean? They're calling the shots,
I love that change in relationship and dynamics there. I think that's so powerful. So why don't you just walk us through, when somebody walks into your office to meet you, what exactly happens?
Well, they'll buzz me back at my desk and they'll say, Phil, your 2 o'clock appointment's here. I walk up the hall and I say, hi, I'm Phil Herman. I shake their hand. Thanks a lot for coming in. Welcome to my home away from home. And, they kind of chuckle at that. I tell them I spend more time here than I do in my home. I go between here and my car that I put 40,000 miles on. This is where we do it. And then, I thank them. I say, I want to thank you very much for coming into the office. I'd like to invite people into the office for a couple reasons. Number one, I want them to see I'm viable. that I don't work out of my garage, I don't work out of my basement. We got a great office location here. This office has been ranked as being one of the top individual producing real estate offices in the country in sales for sales associate. And I'm kind of proud of that. Makes me feel like we're doing some things right. And I kind of like give myself that high five sign, you know, and they chuckle. So I'm trying to make it light, and I'm trying to welcome them. And I'm trying to show them I'm not like everybody else, because I'm not.
All right.
You know, so initially I'm just trying to get a little rapport, and, you know, three things have to take place in that listing appointment. Number one, they got to know I can get the job done. Well, based on my track record, it pretty well says that I should be able to get the job done. But they've also got to like me, and they've got to trust me. If they know I can get the job done and they don't like me, they're probably not going to hire me. If they can know I can get the job done and they like me but they don't trust me, they're probably not going to hire me. If they like me and they trust me and they don't think I can get the job done, they're probably not going to hire me. So that is central in the focus of the appointment. They've got to know I can get the job done, and I got to demonstrate that. And then they've got to like me, and that's being relational, truly caring about the people when they come in. You're trying to help them. And I explain to them, the whole idea here is if I do a good job for you, I'm going to earn all your repeat and referral business. You'll tell all your friends, business associates, relatives, acquaintances, and neighbors about me. And that's how I've led a field of 3,000 agents 27 years straight. It's just helping one family at a time, doing a good job, and then I do another deal because of it, because they refer me to somebody else. That feels good, and it's really who we are. It's at the core of what we do.
Well, and I think that's the one thing that, I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting you and knowing you for a long time. And one of the things that I want to stress to our listeners today is that Phil is genuinely authentic. I mean, I really believe you do care about every one of the clients that you've sold their house for. You care about them, their families, and your natural authentic self is what people feel when they come in and meet you. And I don't think there's a substitute for that. I don't think there's a sales script or clever words that can overcome being genuinely interested in the people that you're talking to. And, you know, to me, that's the sort of the starting point. So now they come in, you're building rapport, getting them to trust you. How else do you get them to trust you? What other things do you do or say to build the trust?
Well, another example of trust on a listing appointment is that I'll ask you, and invariably it's going to go to a couple things. At some point, the seller wants to know what's my property worth and, you know, what's it going to cost me to sell it. They're looking at commission. They're looking at price. But I'll probably ask you, Greg, I'll say, Greg, have you had an opportunity to have a professional independent real estate appraiser come out and appraise your property for its market value yet?
No.
Okay, the reason I ask that question, it's recommended by the National Association of Realtors. They recommend it for two reasons. Number one, so you can make sure you don't overprice or underprice your property, but also to make sure the realtors are not doing that to you. The second and most important reason you want it is that when you get an offer, you might get a lowball offer. The only thing that's helping me negotiate the prices up for the sellers are the independent appraisals. So whether you hire me or you hire any of the other realtors out there, the first thing you need to do is get it professionally, independently appraised. Then you'll never be questioning whether I underpriced or overpriced your property. You'll know that I'm trying to get you the best value I can possibly get you. Now, ultimately, it has to appraise if a buyer gets financing. Now, if they pay cash, it's not required, but a lot of buyers who pay cash, they want to get it appraised anyway. So what I'm doing, Greg, is I'm shifting that whole pressure and conversation of price away from me, that I get to be the good guy.
I mean, and I think that's so brilliant. And the reality is that, I mean, it helps build the trust in you. And I know you told me a while back the statistics about how many realtors misprice homes. Can you share that information if you've got it at the top of your head with us?
You know, just just there was a study that I looked at that said when a seller sets the price on the property, they're wrong 80% of the time. When the realtors, and what we do is our CMAs, when we set the price on the property, we're wrong 50% of the time. So we're a little bit better than the sellers. When the professional independent appraisers set the price on the property, they're right 80% of the time. They're not perfect because the appraisal process is not a science, it's an art. And in any art, there's going to be movement. But in any event, the appraisers are outperforming the sellers and outperforming the realtors. And it's one of the reasons why I like to get them all professionally, independently appraised. And incidentally, I'm a designated appraiser as well as a realtor. I audited 100 of the appraisals that the appraisers did for me. Now, I've had them do thousands over the years. I've been doing this for 20 years, getting the properties independently appraised, all of them. The appraisers outperform me. So it's not that I don't know how to do an appraisal. I do, but there's some emotion in there for me, too. I want that listing because if I don't get that listing, I can't earn that commission. Where the independent appraisers, they only have one agenda. It's to determine the price. They don't care whether the seller likes their opinion of value or not or whether I like it or not. Their only motivation is to figure out what's the upper limit that the buyer's probably going to pay for that property.
I mean, and I think that's such a great thing to do. So now, when you suggest that a prospective seller get an appraiser, who pays for that?
The seller pays for the appraisal. So the appraisal might cost, let's just say the appraisal costs $350 or $500 or whatever it costs. I'll say to you, Greg, whether you hire me or you hire any of the other 3,000 agents running around, you want to get this appraisal done. It is what is in yours and your family's best interest. The appraisal will cost $350. When your offer comes in, if I can't get it up $350, I'll give you back the $350 at closing. That $350 appraisal is probably going to make you thousands in the negotiating process if we get an offer lower than what we really think your property's worth. Because without the appraisal, the offer comes in, I'm going to say to the other agent or to the buyer, I think it's a great deal. They're going to say, oh, sure, you would say that, Phil. You represent the seller. But if we have a leading appraisal firm in the region do the appraisal, that's going to carry a little more weight. And it positions a seller to get a better value for their property.
And I think that is so powerful. And I can imagine in negotiations, when you share that appraisal with a prospective buyer, what kind of response do you get, and what's the weight that they place on that?
Well, I can tell you that this is the sensitive area for every seller. Every seller thinks their house is worth more money than the buyers do, don't they?
Yes, this is true.
The buyers don't think the houses are worth anywhere near what the sellers are asking. So I think what it does for a seller, the appraisals, they're generally not going to, the sellers are generally high. That's the bottom line. The sellers are generally high, and the appraisal sets up a realistic expectation of what's probably going to happen on their property. So, if you think your property is worth $1.2 million, well, maybe it is, but maybe it's really worth $1.1 million. So, if I tell you it's worth $1.1 million at the listing appointment, you're probably not going to like me very much because I'm not singing that dollar tune that you really want to hear. But if a professional independent appraiser tells you the truth, what you need to hear, which may not be what you want to hear, then I'd be able to say, darn market. In other words, I'm able to be on your team. Darn market, I wish it was worth more money too, so I know how you're feeling. But if we realistically want to get the best price, we got to price it to where the buyers are probably going to be. So the appraisers they're helping set up realistic expectations. They outperform the sellers. They outperform the realtors. And it gives the seller, when anybody's selling a property, I always say there's two numbers you need to know. What your property is probably going to sell for and what you qualify for when you turn around to buy a property. And you want both of them to be as accurate as they can be because you're going to make financial commitments based on those two numbers.
I mean, and that is such good advice. So tell me, you go through this. at your meeting in your office with them. Now, at that point, do you get them to sign a listing agreement then based on waiting for the appraisal, or do you wait? Sort of walk us through that process, how that works.
Well, reality it is I've listed houses at that C2 appointment. I've never seen them and sold them and closed them, and those people have referred other people to me. And that's hard for real estate agents to hear because it's not normally how we do real estate. Normally how we do real estate is when Greg's ready to sell his house, he calls up 3 realtors, we all jump in our cars, and we all run out to his house. And I'm doing a little bit differently. I'm inviting him to come into the office to have a consultation with me first. It's really a higher professional level. The surprising part is how many people will come in when you ask. It's the fear of not asking, or it's the fear that they're going to say no. And a lot of that fear is rooted in you don't know what to say. Now, to answer your question, sometimes when people come in, I go ahead and list the property. Well, you haven't seen it? No, I haven't seen it. But you listed it? Yes, I listed it, and I got it appraised. Some of the properties, when they come in, I don't list them when they're in my office. I go ahead and order the appraisal. When the appraisal comes back, it's emailed to me. Then I set an appointment, take the appraisal out, and I go look at their property. Now, when people are coming in, first of all, they're jumping through a hoop, so to speak, for a lack of better languaging. They're jumping through a hoop. They're coming in. They're making a commitment. They're leaning towards me. When they then agree to order up an appraisal, they're signing an appraisal. They're taking another step. They're leaning towards me again. So now that we've ordered the appraisal, there's probably going to be a second meeting with me because they want to see the results of the appraisal, because the appraisal gets emailed to me, and then I present it to the public, to the seller.
Okay.
So, in the second appointment is where most of the listings are going to take place. But I've listed them when they've come in. I've listed them without seeing their property and sold them. I've listed them when they come in and I order the appraisal. I've had people come in and they were a little hesitant to sign the listing until the appraisal was back. And I said, geez, why don't we just figure out a price? We'll go ahead and list it, and we'll adjust the price up or down based on the appraisal when it comes back. Some people were comfortable with that. So you're trying to figure out and find what that seller's risk tolerance level is on how they want to move forward. And so you got to know when to push a little bit and then when to draw back a little bit. But remember what's happened here. These people have come into my office. They're leaning towards me. They made the effort to come in. They're going to sign an appraisal because, quite candidly, Greg, if you don't want to get an appraisal done, I'm probably not interested in your listing. And here's why. My experience is 90% of the people that do not get the appraisal, they overprice their properties. And then they get frustrated with the realtor because the property isn't selling. And they don't come back to me and they don't refer me. As a matter of fact, they don't say nice things about me. On the other hand, the people that get the appraisals done, 90% of them are probably going to get their house sold because they're pricing it to where the buyers are. They have realistic expectations of what a buyer's probably going to be willing to pay for their property, and they price it more to where the buyers are.
So now, let's say you have gotten appraisal back and you've set up that second meeting, and the price is lower than what that seller was, thinking in their brain that they would get for their house. How do you deal with that?
So you come back in. I'm going to bring you back into the office, or I'm going to come to you. And the first question I'm going to have is I'm going to say, Greg, what do you think your property appraised for? I mean, I have it right here. So what do you think it appraised for? And then you're going to commit a number.
Okay.
Say, I think it's worth $1 million.
Okay.
Okay, so you've committed the number. All right, and then I'm going to prepare you for a second. I'm going to say, Greg, this part's the toughest part in our industry. It's when we start talking about price. And then I'll repeat back. I'll say, Greg, all of us sellers feel like our houses are worth more money than the buyers do, and all of the buyers feel like us sellers are too high. And the reality of it is that generally it's somewhere between us. the house is worth more than what the buyer thinks, but it's not worth quite what we sellers think they're worth. So when the sellers see the appraisals, none of the sellers are going, yippee-ki-yay, I hit the jackpot here. So just kind of prepare yourself. It's not quite to that level, but you're pretty close. So, maybe the appraisal comes back at, I don't know, 980 or 975 or 950 or whatever that is. Well, then I've got you, thinking in terms of, maybe realistic it's going to sell around 950. It might not sell for $1 million. By the way, that's not the price range in my marketplace. Wish it was.
All right. So now,
I'm kind of setting the stage for you a little bit. I'm saying, the reason we get these appraisals done, remember that the study showed that 80% of sellers are too high. The realtors are wrong 50% of the time. The professional independent appraisals are right 80% of the time. So the odds are the appraisers are going to be right, even if we don't like it. We may not like what the appraisers have to say, but we're probably going to have to deal with it. Now, it's your house, Greg, and it's your money. And, for you, some people, when they come into my office, what's most important to them is squeezing every last dollar out of the marketplace, and that's what it's all about to them. Other people come into my office, and they're more concerned with the speed of the sale, timing. They want to see that property sell within the next 60 days, or it will create hardship on their family. Others, they don't care how long it takes. They're going to get that $1 million no matter what, if it takes a year, or if it takes 6 months, or if it takes whatever it takes. So my question to you is, what's most important to you? Squeezing every last dollar out of the marketplace, or getting this done within a reasonable amount of time, and at the same time trying to get you as much as we can possibly get you?
Now, my instinct says that most realtors think that people are going to be focused on the money part. But from a marketing perspective, I really think most people are concerned about the impact this is going to have on their family, and time is actually more important to them. So since you've done this 6,000 times, what are most people focused on?
Time.
and could you just repeat that
Time.
one more time?
Yeah, because what people don't want, they don't want it to take a long period of time. They don't want to have to deal with 20 or 50 showings. They don't want to deal with the inconvenience and the stress that it puts on the family, the anxiety. So it's the majority of the people are not looking to squeeze every last dollar. That concept of squeezing out every last dollar is suggesting, it's setting up that what this is really about is getting this done for the most amount of money in a reasonable amount of time with the fewest problems possible.
And I hope our listeners really hear you, Phil, because this is so important. I mean, to me, unfortunately, I see so many agents not sort of understanding that. They think everybody is trying to get, an unrealistic high price. And the reality is, I found that most people are reasonable if you give them a reasonable explanation. And by having you give them the appraisal, setting up to be on their side, you're the person that now they can look to for more objective advice. And I think that's why people feel like, oh gosh, I can trust Phil because he's helping me make the best decisions for me and my family. And that's so important for you as an agent to remember. So listen to Phil, listen to what he had to say, and make sure you take action on that.
Yeah, and I kind of, Greg, at some point you got to detach a little bit. I mean, I might have to say, Greg, you can choose to sell your house. You can choose not to sell your house. Either way is okay with me. I mean, you can choose to, price it at $1 million, and you're putting yourself at risk. It could take a lengthy period of time. It could create a lot of stress on you and your family, or you can choose not to. Whatever you want to do is okay with me.
So what if somebody does say, Phil, okay, I know the appraisal is, at 425, but I really want to list it for 500,000.
Well, Greg, we can do that, but I'm probably not going to be willing to do that for you, Greg. You might have to call somebody else. But here's a thought that I have. Let's get a second appraisal. If that second appraisal comes in closer to the 425, then would it make sense to you that it's probably more in that range than the 500 range?
Probably.
Probably. Well, here's the acid test question. If 10 appraisers says your house was worth around 425, would you still want to list it at 500?
Maybe, Phil. Maybe.
Then you may not be ready to put it on the market just yet. Right?
You're probably right.
You got to wait for some appreciation to take place, buddy.
All right.
10 appraisers are telling you 425. Probably 10 of them are not going to be wrong.
And I think most people at that point, I love that line, because to me that helps people bring it down to the real world. And and the 1 out of 1,000 are going to say, well, no, I'm going to still try for 500,000. But I think that's so powerful at getting people to do that. And it's, you aren't debating them. And I think this is where so many agents get into trouble, in that they start debating the value, and you're never debating them here. You're just giving them options to help them make better decisions.
Exactly. I'm trying to give them good, honest information for them to make a good decision for themselves and their family. And then they'll know when they refer me, this is how I work with everybody.
I think that is so powerful. Now, once you've closed a transaction with somebody, how do you ask for referrals?
Well, I'm subtly doing it at that listing appointment. Remember when I said, Greg, the whole idea here is if I do a good job for you and your family, I'll earn all your repeat and referral business. You'll tell all your friends, business associates, relatives, acquaintances, and neighbors about me. So I'm setting myself up before I even get your listing, that's how I build my business. That's at the heart of the matter for me. I want to do it in such a way that I compel you to want to tell other people about me. So if I get an opportunity during the process, then I might bring that in again. And oftentimes one of the best places when you get the contract accepted, and you can be playful at that point. And I can say, hey, Greg, I did a good job for you, so I was wondering, did I earn a bonus? And then I laugh, just like I am. Nobody ever wants to give me a bonus. But hey, keep me in mind. Refer me to somebody. Do any of your friends, business associates, relatives, acquaintances, or neighbors come to mind? In other words, ask for it. That when you get an accepted contract, they love you. Ask them then. When you're at a closing and they're getting their money, ask them then. If you call to follow up to see if there's any problems with the property that they moved into, ask them then. Ask them when they're happy with you. Because what I've learned in real estate, they love me at the listing and they love me at the closing, and they don't love me so much in the time in between, because until they get what they want, which is their money, they think that I'm the guy that's in the way, and it's not me. The solution to their problem is the person looking back at them in the mirror. As long as they're willing to price their property where the buyers are, they'll be happy. They just need to reduce it if it's not selling.
I love that philosophy. Ask for referrals when they're happy. That's what I call the blinding flash of the totally obvious. And yet somehow we seem to miss those obvious things so many times.
Yeah.
So, Phil, I know some of the people that are listening to you are new in real estate, and they can't say that they've closed 6,000 transactions. What advice would you give to somebody that's newer in real estate that doesn't have your track record on how to get somebody to want to come and actually meet them?
If I'm new in real estate, and you might not like hearing this from me, but it's my truth and it's my reality and it's my way. If I'm new in real estate, or even if I'm not new in real estate, or if I'm a veteran real estate agent and I'm a powerhouse and I'm doing a lot of transactions, my Phil Herman's job is to be as dollar productive as I can possibly be. And at the highest level, it's either to be face-to-face on an appointment with a seller or buyer, or it is developing opportunities for me to be on face-to-face through marketing and high-impact prospecting, because I believe they're hand in glove. I believe you do both.
Yes.
So where that may sound very simple, if that is my job description, if I'm in here and I'm not face-to-face on an appointment, then I need to do something that's going to get me face on appointment. How else am I going to get any of the money?
I think that's.
But what we have is we have this creative avoidance as realtors. We come up with all these excuses and reasons to not do the very thing that'll help us get what we want. So often I say, the key question may be, what stops you or blocks you from taking action on what you intellectually know will help you get what you want? Like, I like to do deals. It's fun. I enjoy it. I do it because I have to do it. I do it because I want to do it. God willing, I'll do it another 30 years. I'm starting to get pretty good at this. It's no time to quit. I would say, look, I'd walk. If I'm a new agent, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to say, all right, well, I got to pay my rent and my utility bills and my car payment and meet Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the fundamentals, food, shelter, and clothing. How am I going to do that? Well, I got to get in front of a buyer or a seller. Well, if I'm not in front of any and I have no appointments, then I got to figure out how to do that. So there are so many ways to do that. It's everywhere. I'm not saying my way is the only way. I'm saying I have a way. That's better than having no way, or a way that really doesn't produce the kind of results that you'd like to have. You're going to produce results one way or another. So, but what I've learned is that today, this is 38 years later, or however long I've been doing this. I'm really 35, Greg. I've been in business this long. I'm 35. That's what I am.
Well, we started working together when I was
35,
10, so.
single, and I'm handsome.
All right.
And smart and thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
All right.
So to answer your question, I would say you want to be developing business through your marketing and your advertising. You don't want to go for sale by owner on marketing and advertising. There's nobody better out there doing this than Hobbs Herder. Nobody, because I've looked. There's nobody better. And, and then let them direct you. Be coachable. You have to be coachable. The relationship between a coach and a student, it's not all about the coach. It's what kind of student are you bringing to the party? Are you coachable? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to change on a consistent basis? Because that's what it takes. I'm a change agent.
I agree with that so much. One of the things that I also try and tell, especially newer agents or people that want to grow their business, is you need to know your numbers, and you need to know how many new people are finding out about you as a realtor each and every day. And if there aren't enough people finding out about you through a combination of your marketing, your prospecting, whatever you're doing, it's hard to do well. And I talk to some agents and they say, well, I didn't really talk to anybody yesterday. Then I talked to one person today. And you go through the month and they've talked to a total of 20 people. And you think, well, that's why you're not doing well. You got to get a bunch of people to find out about you each and every day. And if a bunch of people find out about you, the chances of you doing business go up astronomically. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was this coaching relationship, and there's a couple things, and I see we're sort of running out of time, so I want to get to these before we wrap up here today. First of all, you've had this philosophy that I have had great respect for of what I call lifelong learning. Early on when we met, I can't even think of how many of my seminars you came to, and yet I know you go to everybody's seminars. You study the marketing books, and you are great at all this stuff, and yet you're always looking to say, how can I get better? Why do you think that philosophy is so important, and what impact has that had for you?
Well, it's what that conjures up is in 1988, before Tony Robbins became really famous, I was at a seminar in his house in La Jolla, California. he taught the class barefoot in the sleeveless T-shirts and shorts. And he brought up this concept, constant and never-ending improvement. The acronym was CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. And then I looked into that, and that came from a Japanese business life philosophy called Kaizen, Kaizen. Kai means change, and Zen means good, change for the good. And it's every day, everywhere, everyone. So I believe that my only competitive advantage is my ability to recognize change faster than my competition, implement it, and sustain it longer. So I'm always looking, what's a better way? You know, there's what I already know what I know. It's what I know is what got me where I am. It's what I don't know that can get me to the next level. So, you know, I'm looking to change. So coming back to your seminars, they evolve over time. Time changes and you change with it. Well, I want to know what your new philosophies are, what's worked, what you've tested, what's come down the pike. I mean, when we started this, Greg, there was no internet.
That is true.
But we're still 35, bud.
Yes.
But now you've got social media, internet marketing, and advertising that, is a big play into the market. And, the same thing there. Don't go for sale by owner on that. You got to hire professionals that know what they're doing. So change, I think your ability to recognize change, implement it faster, sustain it longer than your competition. You want to I shadowed 40 real estate agents across the country. It took me years to do that and a bundle of money. And I spent anywhere from 3 to 5 days with them, looking at their business models, their operating systems. I was looking, how can I grow? Therein lies the opportunity. I've done a few deals today, so far in my career, but I start every day at zero, as if I have no listings, no pendings, and no money in my pocket. As a matter of fact, I don't carry any money in my pocket. If I have money in my pocket, I feel like I'm rich, and then I don't want to go to work. So I carry no money in my pocket. Then I feel poor, and I have to go to work.
All right.
So it's just that passion. It's a drive, and drive's a whole nother conversation. I enjoy the conversation on drive.
So Phil, I know you're in the process of capturing a lot of the wisdom and what you've learned in a book. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what you're trying to communicate in that book, and when do you think that'll be ready?
Well, in a book, I guess, Greg, fundamentally, I'm inviting the reader, whether they're new or a seasoned high-producing veteran, to eavesdrop in on a conversation that I've had with myself over the years about the journey, the adventure, the challenges, the dilemmas, the good times, the bad times, the highs and the lows that have come along the way, in that path to 6,000 transactions. I've learned the most important conversation that we have, I believe, is the inner dialogue, the conversation we have inside our own minds about what is so. And, I have a method or a way. It's a way. It's not the only way. And, but I've had a few wins to share over the years and, that I would like to share. But I've also made a lot of mistakes, probably more importantly, a lot of mistakes that I'd like to share as well that have paved the way for me. And created some opportunities. So it's a I'd like to give back to the industry. I'm not stopping. I'm not quitting. Like I said, I'm starting to get good. It's no time to quit. I'm not going to stop listing and selling real estate, but I'd sure like to, invite you or whoever's listening in to kind of eavesdrop, if you will, in on a conversation.
All right.
About what I thought about along the way.
Well, I've had the good fortune to actually see sort of the outline of your book, and I will tell you, I am very excited about getting it and reading it because I know there's going to be incredible value in there. For our listeners today, Phil is in the midst of doing this book, and hopefully it will be ready later this year. If you will send me an email at Phil at hobbsherder.com. I will put you on a mailing list so that as soon as Phil's book is out, you will get notified about it. He'll probably have some sort of a pre-publication offer for you, maybe a special deal. So if that's of interest to you, just drop an email to Phil, Phil, at hobbsherder.com, and we'll put you on that mailing list. And Phil, I see that we are out of time. I was hoping we might have a little time for questions, but since we're sort of at our time, I would like to invite our audience, if you have questions for Phil, send them to me at greg.herder@hobbsherder.com. There should be a little link somewhere on there, or you can type them in the question box, and I'll collect the questions, try and get the answers from Phil, and then distribute them to everybody that's on the call today. Also, I would greatly appreciate it if you would send us feedback, and I will share all the feedback with Phil, so you can give me feedback at greg.herder@hobbsherder.com, or type it into the text box here on the webinar. And Phil, I really want to thank you for your time. I know our listeners took away some great value out of it, and you are always such an inspiration, and I look forward to watching you progress over the next 10, 15 years as you keep changing the game for us all in real estate. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for sharing with our audience today.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thanks to the listeners, fellow realtors. I humbly appreciate the hour of this discussion. Thank you.